to make sure now it can record.
I'll kind of just get stuck. Like I was saying, the main kind of scope of it is at students and just kind of how to answer the exam and how to approach the ABQ. They're the two main things with this. So I suppose with Leaving Cert Business, the way the course is now, like it's 100% exam, and it's quite strict what you need to put down on paper in your exam. It's all about quality, not quantity whatsoever. So you need to have good, strong keywords that are relevant to the marking scheme. And if an examiner sees them, they're going to love it. They'll give you all the marks. And if they don't see them, they're pretty much not going to give you any marks. So it's quite black and white. You could write a page of information that's pretty truthful and like nothing wrong with it, but it just doesn't hit any of the keywords that you want to hit, and you're not going to hit any of the marks. So I suppose what's impossible is for me to tell you what all those keywords are during the night here. So I'm going to try and focus on when you know them, how you put them down, and then show you how hopefully you can try and get to know them. And I'll point you to some resources where you can kind of check out where those keywords are, as well as the marketing scheme. So we'll begin. I suppose with this then, the first place to start is just the paper layout and choice. You've probably covered this a good bit, so I'm kind of gonna skim through it, but I know usually one of the questions I get is, can I leave out this unit? Do I have to cover X, Y, Z? Do I have to know the break even? Whatever it is. So I'll try and just do a quick skim of it, and just to kind of ease us into it. So your short section are worth 80 marks. Okay, so it's 20% of the paper. They can be rushed and totally overlooked. I'm nearly contradicting myself that because I'm going to tell you to do them in about 20-25 minutes and take way longer than ABQ, but they can be overlooked and rushed. So just don't do that. They count as much as the ABQ. You can see the ABQ here is worth 20%, and that's the thing that gets everyone up the walls, gets everyone mad panicked about, and people overthink, overwrite, ruin their whole exam in the ABQ. But the shorts are worth as much. So just make sure you give them that amount of time that they deserve, because you can easily throw away a couple of percent and it could be the difference between H1 and 2 or 2 and 3. So with the shorts, you do get a lot of choice, 8 out of 12. So that kind of does open it up to potentially cut out parts of the course. And if like a top student comes to me and says, what can I leave out? Like what units can I not do? I would be very slow to recommend cutting out anything really. If you were like more down in the H5, H6 and looking to bump up, there's probably much kind of greater scope to chop stuff out and then try and learn less content better, so that you'll have less choice in the exam, but you might be able to do better in the questions you do answer, rather than spreading out your study load and not knowing the stuff as well. But if you're really going for the top grades, I'd be slow to cut out too much stuff, particularly around the shorts there. I suppose if I was the examiner setting the paper, I'd be thinking about what people might leave out, and then making sure I get a good bit of that on the paper to try and stop people from cutting out parts of the course they're supposed to study. So with the ABQ, we're going to look at that. It's on units 2, 3, and 4 this year. So you'll get an A, B, and C in the ABQ, and you'll get one part from each will be on unit 2, one on unit 3, one on unit 4. And then your longs, we have 4 longs at 15% per question, so making up the 400. So it's laid out like this, I suppose. And if we wanted to look at kind of what's important, your long questions here, it's broken up into part 1 and part 2. And essentially you have to do one from part 1 and one from that should say part 2, and then any 2 other questions. So you can see in part 1 here, it's unit 1 and 6 and 7. So this here is like the bonus kind of COVID question that crept onto the paper a few years ago, and it's still in this year. So it has been unit 1 the last couple of years. So it looks like it'll probably stay being unit 1, which means that if you only covered, say, unit 1 there in really good detail, you might have a choice of 2 long questions. And then generally question 2 then is always unit 6, and question 3 is always unit 7. Those 2 units aren't on the ABQ, and they tend to be the ones that students like to potentially look at kind of leaving out or whatever, or trying to do less of. Like unit 6 is much bigger, so there's a lot more to cover in it. Unit 7 is kind of the EU and stuff, which sometimes if you don't do it in another subject, students struggle with. So you kind of have a choice between either of them, but if you just did unit 1 in great detail, you've kind of got options there. You've got 1 or 2 questions in that part. And then over here, you're generally question 5 and 6 are unit 2, 3, and 4, and they're going to be in the ABQ, so you definitely have to cover them. So you should be able to answer 2 long questions just from doing unit 2, 3, and 4, and you'll be able to do the ABQ as well. And then from that, you have unit 4 and 5 generally make up the other part of it. So if you were like, I kind of put down here, what are the most important topics? If we're saying unit 2 to 4 there, they're essential because they're on the ABQ. So you actually have to have them. There's no real choice. And then if we threw in unit 1 and unit 5, what that is going to do is guarantee us 4 long questions over here and 2 long questions over here. And you have to do 4 in total. So you've got good choice. Now, the only place that comes a little unstuck then is in the short questions. Potentially, like you could have 5 questions coming from unit 6 and 7. So you might be a little bit caught out there. And if you didn't know 1 or 2 of the other ones, you could just get a bit stuck. So if you're going for real top marks, you kind of cover everything. And if you're not hitting the top marks and you're kind of more middle kind of H's, you might have scope to leave out a little bit to give yourself a kind of better chance to do well in the content you do learn. You'll just have a bit less choice. Okay, let's move on from that anyway, and we can kind of revisit as we go. But I suppose in order to do well in Leaving Cert Business, you think what's the most important thing? So if you were to listen to me for about 2 minutes and then leave, you might be able to take something kind of from this. Like, keywords, absolutely the most important thing. You get them in, it's likely you would get, 80%. You'll probably get a H2 if you just wrote keywords and you didn't do anything else in the exam. And then the other thing is like answering the question, making sure that you're applying the keywords around whatever verb is being asked in the question or whatever way the question is asked. If you can do those 2 things, you can basically do very, very well in business. Now, the problems generally are with that you don't know what the keywords are, you're overwhelmed with lots of info. And I think a big issue that I find with students over the years, like I'm teaching this 20 years, is that business students love studying the stuff that they love. So they might love Maslow and they'll just be happy studying Maslow all day, and they'll avoid McGregor because they hate McGregor or whatever it is. I find that business students just get really into a certain part of the course. They love it. They're all in on it. And then probably just like the bits that they don't like, they just avoid. And if you really want to improve and do well in business, you just need to make sure you're covering all the areas, covering all the topics in every chapter and not hiding kind of behind anything. Okay, and if you want to learn keywords, don't just write notes from the book, transfer them over, rewrite notes, make them look pretty, be delighted with yourself that you did 2 hours tonight. Make sure that you're testing yourself, that you know the keywords. I'll go through that a little bit later, okay? But keywords are king, okay? So the most important thing is keywords. Essentially now, I'm not going to just read through this word for word or whatever, but you don't get rewarded for quantity or length of answer, okay? So that's important. You actually don't need to write very much. You just need to write good stuff. And I would encourage you to actually not think about writing too much in general, because all you will do is bury the good stuff in your answer for an examiner. If you think of an examiner sitting down to mark the paper and you put like 2 or 3 important keywords in an answer that big, like they have to go and search, and there's a chance like look at something could be overlooked or whatever. But if you just write really good stuff, really short, concise sentences, stick to the point, no filler, no introductions, anything like that, you're going to have a much better chance of, 1, knowing yourself that you've written something useful because you're like, that's the keyword, it's there, they're going to see it. And then 2, them just not missing, them they'll be delighted marking your paper. They'll be able to just look through it. Everything will be nice and obvious to them when they're correcting, and they'll just give you the marks very, very easy. So that's what I would strongly recommend. Don't overwrite. Don't write anything that's irrelevant. Don't write one of the most important things. Just forget about all filler, all intro, anything like that. So what we're saying here is you have to know the keywords and then deliver them and move on, okay? And then what are the keywords? They're generally, like if you're in marking schemes and you're looking through them, it's the words that are bolded, like, they're emphasized in it. I'm creating resources and sharing them with teachers, and you'll get access to them in classes and stuff as well. And I focus in on just trying to taking the keywords and condensing them down, and I have flashcards on the site and stuff like that in lots of the solution packs. They're bolded words. So I'm trying to do that for you so that you just know when you look at sale of goods and services, it's merchantable quality, durable relative to price. Like that's all that matters. The rest is kind of window dressing. Like it's just not that important. You get that stuff in, you get all the marks. So knowing what they are and then testing yourself that and you're able to recall them will get you very, very far in business. Okay. So what we're going to do, just have a look at this, is two different answers. Okay. So if we're going through this question then on page 4, it came up in 2018. Okay. So we have a script here from when I went and reset the Leaving Cert. So when there was a change in it that you could get your scripts, I registered, went in the center and sat it like a student, and then found the whole thing actually just really, really useful to do. So that was 2018 was the first year you could do that. And I knew then you'd be able to go and take pictures, and I'd be able to just see then how it was marked and be able to kind of show it for something like this. So hopefully it's useful to see this on it forward. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so what's really, really important besides the keywords is the verb I was saying. So this verb here is illustrate. I've written give example there. Like, make sure you know if there was 5 things you're going to take away from tonight, if you didn't know that illustrate meant give an example and now you do, you're going to be up marks. Okay, so we're off to a win there. Okay, for that. Okay, but the key thing with illustrate is like I kind of drill that into the students that I'm teaching year on year, and then I'd say illustrate there like examples. And the really important thing to make sure you're doing those well is giving the keywords. So you still have to give the keyword for whatever it is you're doing, but on top of that, you also have to give an example. Okay, so illustrate doesn't just mean give an example, it means state something, give the keywords, and give an example. And we'll go through that structure in a sec. But the main thing I'm trying to show you here is how much you could write and how much you have to write. Okay, so it was illustrate. So 2 different ways the chocolate market. Again, if something is bolded in a question, that just means you want to watch out. Okay, so that's my exclamation mark. You want to watch it. That's important. Okay, so because the chocolate market is referenced in the question, there's going to be marks going for making it relevant to the chocolate market. Okay, and then it's basically how it could be segmented. So the segmented bit is what we want to have our kind of keywords for, and the chocolate market bit is the bit that we want to give an example on. Okay, so we need to say you can segment a market this way. This is what that means. Here's an example to the chocolate. Okay, how they would generally break up a question like that then would be 2 marks for stating it, 2 marks for explaining it, and then 1 mark for your example. Okay, so let's have a look at what I wrote here. So we had age, and then I had younger kids may have less money or want to eat less, or parents may want them to have smaller treats. Adults usually have more to spend, so can afford higher prices and also eat more calories than kids, so may get bigger bars or whatever. Okay, so kind of explaining there, yes, chocolate can be sold to different age groups, and the chocolate bar makers would, or if any business would decide, yeah, let's pitch a product at this group, let's pitch a product at this group because of age. Now, in the example then, we can see here, Cadbury's make Freddos for kids and they charge 40 cents, and Dairy Milk for adults charging €1 or whatever, okay? So I got a mark here for my example, and for my state and explain, there was only 1 set of 2 marks given here. And that's because there was a keyword missing, okay? So the overall title here was demographic that was missing, and just from leaving out 1 keyword would mean that this answer would then be worth 3.5 marks instead of 5.5 marks. So you have a potential student going from getting 100% to getting 60%, or a H1 to a H4 just for 1 word.
Gav bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
He's a hardy man.
Is he?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I made it there as well. Yeah. And then like, you know, the reason then people don't get H1s and 2s and think they've done a great exam is because that happens like over and over through the paper, and then your marks just come down and you end up not being near kind of how well you thought you did with that. Okay, so then being a good teacher, I learned from my mistakes there. What I had actually done was I had written about gender and age and broken it up, and in that year, because I don't think it had come up in ages when I did it. And then anyway, when I went back in 2021, I reset the paper again, and then like the big difference, I suppose, and what I learned from doing it, I didn't think I'd end up getting into this here, but in 2018, I just like, because I wouldn't study for it or anything, I just got like, you can apply, you can go in, you can just sit down and start writing away. And I kind of made silly mistakes that I would be shocked if my students made, and like be just horrified for them. Like, I didn't bring a calculator in because I just wasn't doing exams, you know, I wasn't in an exam headspace at all. And then I just completely spent too long on the ABQ, which is something I'll get to tonight as well. And I was basically then rushing. I ended up doing a wage calculation question without a calculator. I was doing like long division and all sorts. So I kind of ended up having to rush through it. And it was a really, really valuable learning experience, because I actually got to see, right, you can be under pressure if you set yourself up wrong. If you spend way too long and overwrite, you're in trouble. And what was wrong was I was just writing loads and loads because I had loads of stuff to write, and I got caught into that trap. And the top students, that can happen to you. and you can overrun the ABQ, and you might realize you look up and it's an hour and a half gone, and you're way behind, and like you're just not making that time up, and then you start rushing, you start leaving out keywords and errors like that, and you just run into trouble. So discipline with timing is really, really important. And I suppose that's what the mocks is for. If you've got your mocks next week, like, you know, just watch out for that and see what you can take and learn from it. And another big thing in study would be to time yourself when you're answering questions. Like, put time limits on your homework. Don't leave it open, because you're not going to be practicing exam technique properly if you don't do that. Okay, but I redeem myself. So we look at 2021 here. Okay, it was the similar question, just didn't refer to chocolate. We've illustrated. Okay, so give examples. Two different ways the market can be segmented. Okay, what you'll notice here is then they don't reference chocolate, but they do reference example. So you still have to do that state and explain and relate thing. Okay, and your relate in this case would be your example. So you can use chocolate, you can use whatever it is you want, you can use a different type of product for 2 different points. It doesn't have to be related to anything, but you do need to give an example. And something I would get asked is, do examples have to be real? I would say in this instance, absolutely. Like, I mean, you should definitely be able to pick products where they break up the market and use actual products or brands, you know, like Freddo and like Dairy Milk or whatever. You know, if you were to ask to give an example of something that a product or brand name mightn't come to mind very, very easily, the examiner might end up looking for it. And an example, what they want is just for you to show them that you understand the concept. But in something like this, where you're talking about a market being segmented, I would definitely push my students towards giving real life examples for that. Okay, and trying not to use like local examples from your local village. Try and use a brand that would be known by an examiner, so that it's easy for them to kind of understand that you know what you're talking about. Okay. Anyway, so let's get to this now. The marks were slightly more here. Like in the previous question, it was 2 + 2 + 1. And in this question now, it's going to be 2 + 3 + 2. So again, something that I would get asked often in class and by people, do you have to write more when there's more marks going for something? And you don't, okay? So when you can see here, this is just how they distribute the marks when they're correcting the papers. So there was only 5 marks available in the previous year, so they split it up into three sets, like 2 and 2 and 1. Here, there's 7 marks available, and then they still split that up into 3 things: the state, the explain, and the relate. So if you saw that question again in a different year and it said 4 + 3 + 3, you don't need to write more. So you won't know when you're doing your exam anyway, but those numbers don't matter so much what number is written there, but how many of them matter, and how many of them means it's how many things the examiner is looking for. So for this 2, they're looking for you to say a type of segmentation. For this 3, they're looking for you to explain the type of segmentation. And then for this 2 here, they're looking for the example, because we have illustrate up there. Okay, so let's have a look. How much do you need to write to score well in Leading Your Business? I think this is a great illustration of it. Okay, so demographic, that gets 2 marks because it's a way to segment a market. Okay, so this is your state bit. Let's have a look at the explain bit. Splitting a market up based on age, gender, and this gets you your 3 marks. Okay, so I'm like saving ink here, like a very sustainable exam management going on here. Okay, if half you turned off there, I don't blame you. Okay, but like, you don't need to write much. The examiner here will be loving that. Like they can just see, yes, the student knows what market segmentation, a way to segment the market. Yes, this person understands what demographic means. It's breaking it up: age, gender, income, whatever. Okay, and then for relate bit, we have to give our example. Freddo's aimed at kids in the chocolate market. Yes, perfect, 2 marks. Okay, so that there is a H1. No one in the country is getting more marks for that part of that question. Like, you know, it's your equal first place in the country for that, and you're barely writing anything. So that should really hopefully make you realize, right, quality matters. Get the good stuff down, forget all the other stuff. And like that would be something big that I think I would hope that people would take from this. Like, if you can just know what the keywords are, learn them off, and just get them down without crowding your paper. 1, you're going to have loads of time, and 2, you're going to pick up loads of marks. And just for illustration, I suppose in that 2018, when I was saying the first time I resat the paper, I ended up kind of being like really tight to like just get the exam finished. And in 2021, when I went through and answered all the questions like that, I was actually able to answer every short, every long, within the time limit, and have time kind of left over, because I was pretty much on a mission to just write as little as I could and still get H1 or kind of close to full marks or whatever it is. So that was the general idea behind it. Okay, so let's move on. So point number one, the most important thing really is keywords are king. Make sure you get them down. Make sure they're very, very obvious to the examiner. Yeah, like that's it.
Mom, I'll go in here.
Okay, so quick little exercise. Give you kind of 2 minutes break for me. In 2 minutes, I'll set us up here, and I'm going to get you to try and do something, and then I'll explain how I would do it as well, and we can kind of talk through it. Okay, this is from 2022, question 5B. Okay, so it's about M6 motors. So you might have done this in your study already. Alan Naughton is an entrepreneur who set up M6 Motors in 2011. The business is now one of the leading car sourcing companies in Ireland. As the business grew, Alan expanded his workforce. The company specializes in high specification cars at competitive prices. Okay, so we have, I call these kind of mini ABQs, or when they give you a little story. So this is a long question. You can see it's question 5B. Now, this little intro thing, they're good to read anyway, because the whole point of them is they put context on a question. So they might get you to think about the question that's about to be asked. If a student asks me, when do I need to write about M6 motors? I would say the most important thing is to read the question. And if in the question they mention M6 motors, there's probably going to be marks going for referring to M6 motors or making a point relevant to M6 motors. If in a follow-on question, M6 motors is not in it, even though it's underneath that, you don't have to necessarily refer to M6 motors. There's no marks would generally go for any question that doesn't reference the business. If you were to apply stuff to M6 motors, that's fine. You don't lose marks, but it's the keywords that would kind of matter there. So with this, bearing this in mind, let's have a look. Discuss how stock control and quality control achieve efficiencies for a business such as M6 Motors, okay? So because this is in here, I would be saying you want to get something to do with M6 Motors in your answer. And then we have an and here, so it's stock control and quality control. So there's two things really there, two parts of the answer. One part on stock control, one on quality control. Both you should link to M6 Motors. And if we look at the amount of marks going, it's 20. So we have two sets of 10 marks. It was broken down 4 + 4 + 2, where you're basically getting 4 marks for 2 sets of keywords and 2 for linking it to M6 Motors. So what I'd like you to do there is read the question below and give it a score out of 10. And I'll just give you like 2 minutes to do that. You can take a break from listening to my voice. I'll grab a quick drink and then we'll talk through it. Okay, so just 2 minutes, read that. You be the examiner. I just want you to put a number there beside that 10 out of 10. A lot of harsh markers going on in the chat there. Okay, yeah. Hopefully now everyone had a chance to kind of have a look through. So I'll go. Yeah, I would probably agree. I would definitely, when I'm teaching it, I would tell my students absolutely, I'm not giving any marks for that. So let's just have a quick look through and see why. Okay, and then we're going to compare it to what will get marks. Quality control here. This doesn't get you any marks because we were given it in the question, so there's no marks. Just going for it. I believe this is one of the most important areas of control for a business. Okay, so up to that, like that's just absolute nonsense. We'll just get rid of that anyway. Quality is essential for a brand to do well. Like that's nothing to do with quality control. Quality control is ensuring that repeatedly ensuring that the quality of the product is up to a certain standard, as opposed to just being, quality to do well. So I wouldn't be giving any marks there. Focusing on quality should be no quality control done there. Is focusing 1S, no? Focusing on quality should be prioritized to make sure it doesn't drop. Okay, like potential, like just a bit bluffy potentially, but I don't think there's any keywords. There's no real good stuff in there. Like what I'm looking for as an examiner and what I'm looking for when I'm correcting my students' work is like, have they studied the course? Can they show me that they've actually looked at this? They've gone and learned what quality control is, and they can tell me what it is. Like, have they studied it? Do they know the good stuff? And that there looks like something that if I asked a student who doesn't do business and does history, what's quality control, they could probably come up with that. And that for me then probably doesn't differentiate you between someone who should be getting the marks because they study business and someone who's just having a stab at it. Okay. So I wouldn't really say too much there. Okay. And then if a business can enhance levels of quality goods or services, will be a great thing to achieve. Again, not saying anything because it's non-specific. Definitely that's complete nonsense. And this would help bring efficiencies to a business. Like the question is looking for efficiencies, which is trying to say something like, produce it quicker, produce it cheaper, or whatever it is. But yeah, there's nothing specific there. I would be scoring 0 and 0 there for the kind of keywords out of 4. And then if Domino's Pizza improved their pizza base, they would increase quality control. So like you're supposed to link it to M6 Motors, so that doesn't really link it to M6 Motors. So if I was, doing this in a class exam and I gave this in a class test and I was correct, and I would punish this student here and not be given any marks to make sure that the next time that they answer this question, they're going to be getting some of the keywords that I'm telling them are really important to be putting in for quality control. So I would be scoring a 0 there, definitely for my students anyway for that. A different examiner could potentially look at that and maybe go, they might give one kind of set, but let's look at how you can be sure, okay? Like, and this is the kind of important thing, I suppose. When I'm presenting here to you tonight, I'm showing my way of doing it. I've taught business for 20 years. I just have, I've come to my own way of doing things. Your teacher might do something different, and I'm definitely not here to say, this is the only way to do it. This is the right way to do it. Like, a teacher might tell you, give an example for every single answer you give, and they might have reasons to do that because it means you're going to give a second point of information, and often an example can be used to expand something. So there might be a reason for that. I'm going to tell you that you only need to give examples when it says illustrate. Otherwise, you don't need them, but it can be good to have. So like neither are too wrong there at all. So I'm not here trying to say this is the way to do it. And so when I'm scoring 0 for that, my main intention there is to just make you realize, geez, yeah, maybe actually that's light in keywords and it's a bit of a bluff. Okay. So I would be just getting you to avoid doing that as much as possible. So let's look at this. For reference, let's just quickly have a look at the marking scheme here. In 2022, this is what the examiners down here would use when they're correcting it, actually. So let's just have a quick look at that, okay? So the aim of quality control is to ensure all products reach a specific standard recognized by the industry or the business or whatever it is, okay? It can involve a quality controller doing physical inspections or sampling, and this will result in consistency and greater customer satisfaction. And then you can have a quality awards like the Q Mark or ISO 9000. So when we're talking like the keywords, if I see something like this, if I see something like that, I'm giving you 4 marks and I'm giving you another 4 marks. So if you know what the keywords are and you can learn them off and just put them down, you're just going to be getting the full mark. So let's have a look at the answer then that was given. So quality control can be improved by achieving recognized quality marks or awards. So you can see this bit here. Straight away, we're getting 4 marks for that. We're in, like, great start. Don't write a sentence that can't score you marks, okay? Rule 1 really of leading to your business. So just like make sure when you start writing something, there's keywords in it or it's going to be a waste of time and you should just stop, okay? So sampling can be used to assure quality. So again, sampling there, sampling here. So that means the 4 marks are here, okay? So you pick up marks super fast if you just give the keywords for it. And then I've mentioned Alan here. Alan could use quality circles within staff to improve processes and ideas. So because I put Alan in there, that's where the additional, 2 marks is coming from, because Alan was the M6 Motors guy. I'd say the link there could probably be slightly better if it was to do with M6 Motors and it was this summer and I was you sitting the test, I would write something about a car, or, like, the cars will last longer, there'll be less breakdowns with the cars. Like, write a sentence that is relevant to it. They don't expect you to know much about cars whatsoever. All they're really looking for you to do is apply what you know about quality control to a product like the cars from M6 Motors. Okay, so that page there is just to show you, get good keywords into your answers and don't just bluff your way through the exam, because it's likely that you won't score very well if you do, and you could fill a lot of paper with a lot of stuff that won't matter, and you'd be much better just thinking about what you need and trying to get it down. And don't start just writing an answer when you see a question and filling the page and trying to show off, because you'll overwrite you might miss the mark and you'll end up kind of like hiding the keywords. So write less, write better stuff. Okay, and then the other thing.
Sorry, Gavin, just before you move on there, that's probably just one question that was very relevant to this part. Just said, could you say something about inspections when talking about quality control?
Yeah. So like physical inspections there, you can see is in the marking scheme. And like, so you don't need every keyword in there at all. You just need, like, I would say the gold standard would be a heading and then two kind of statements and then relate something like, which could be an example. So in this instance here, like the main two things I said of note were achieved recognized quality marks or awards. That's going to get me that 4 marks. And then I said sampling and physical inspections then are pretty much the same thing, I suppose. Physical inspections would be like going and checking stuff actually looks right. Sampling might be more if you had a vineyard and you were tasting the wine or something that you want to taste. Like, so coffee, like a barista in a coffee shop might every 20 coffees make an espresso and taste if it's not too bitter and adjust stuff or whatever. So either of them, absolutely perfect. Yeah, they'd be great. And then mentioning the quality controller then would be fine also. And then quality circles was the other thing I had mentioned there. That's often accepted for points as well, which is like a group of staff that come together to try and discuss how to improve quality on a regular basis. Bill, and was there anything else that cropped up from that, or?
No, that was kind of it. Yeah, that was just the only one that was very relevant there.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So yeah, pop stuff in the chat, and then we can stop like that as we kind of go. Yeah, that's ideal. So time wise, yeah. So I'll try and move through a little bit, and conscious then the day after the bank holiday, don't want to see it on too long, or batteries could be low. So I'll take a coffee break if you need one. But okay, so the main thing, keywords, like that's the most important thing. And the other big important thing is answer the question you were asked. So often a student might get tempted, they see something like, quality control, and they just jump into writing as much as they can about it. But make sure, or market segmentation, I'm going to show you an answer here now. Make sure that you actually read the question and you answer the question, because you can't get any marks for correct information that isn't relevant. So let's have a look, okay? So 2018 here was discuss the benefits for a large chocolate manufacturer of engaging in market segmentation. Okay, so you can see the first thing that I put down, like I was saying, I was so eager to impress in 2018 because I was just like, this is like, I had all this information. I was like, let's just like get it all down. The examiner's going to be like, who's this? Like, no. But like you can see here, then there's just like little silly errors that just cost you time wise. They're just a complete waste of time. No need to do it. So I wrote market segmentation involves dividing a potential market into separate parts based on demographics, geographics, or whatever it is. So like given some kind of explanation as to what market segmentation is, and you can see there's nice keywords and stuff, but it's worth absolutely nothing because the question is about the benefits of market segmentation. So you need to have only benefits. Like there's no point putting definitions, no point putting in anything that isn't a benefit. And how you would approach questions with benefits, I wanted to cover because it's something that students kind of struggle with. It's the same with questions that are like implications or other questions that might be like the advantages and the disadvantages of something. So when you get a question like that, I would tell my students they just have to show something either going up or going down, and then explain with the keywords why that's happened. Okay, so if you see implications, benefits, advantages, disadvantages, challenges, anything like that, say increase something, decrease something, higher something, lower something. Just always think arrows up and down. So if I'm teaching that, anytime a question is like that, I'll get an arrow up and an arrow down drawn in to just remind the students. Make sure you have to show. To show a benefit, you have to show something increasing or decreasing, like, increase profits, increase sales, decrease costs, whatever it is, decrease labor turnover, whatever. And then it's usually broken up into 2 sets of marks. So just say in this case, it's a 2 plus 3 here. It'll be 2 for giving the benefit and 3 for giving the keywords as to how that benefit is caused by whatever. So here it's market segmentation. Okay, so benefit of market segmentation. What do Cadbury's get out of selling dairy milk to an adult and Freddos to a kid, or whatever it is? Okay, selling Christmas chocolates, boxes of heroes at Christmas versus not selling them the other parts of the year. So let's get in and have a look at what was good here. So it's kind of in here. Therefore, a chocolate manufacturer can focus advertising. Okay, so this here is something then you can do through market segmentation. You can advertise kids chocolate at kids in the right place, whatever. There's different laws around doing that, but you can advertise, like Christmas chocolates at Christmas time. You don't have to advertise Christmas chocolates all year. So you can actually split it up and go, they want heroes at Christmas, so let's spend all our money on the Christmas budget from November on or October on. Okay. And then you can see here that linking it to market segmentation, it's going to be cost effective with campaigns because they can adjust marketing options based on the segments. So this here is ultimately the kind of benefit of it. They're going to save money. They won't waste money by advertising in the wrong place or at the wrong time. Okay. So this here, so it doesn't really matter which comes first, the benefit or the keyword, but the keywords for the segmentation is that you can focus the advertising because they're split, and the benefit is it's cost effective. So we got 2 + 3, so it's going to be full marks for that. Okay. So if I was just to put anything in there, we are saying that you want to show something going up or going down for a benefit, advantage, etc. Okay, let's move on. So I've kind of covered this, so I'll just give you the main thing that you should do when you're answering questions is state something, explain something, and then relate it. This might often be an extra explain thing, or else the relate bit could be an illustrate, or it could be linking back to the question. So like our link back to the question there was our like M6 motors type thing, okay? If you're asked to explain it. So I feel like we've kind of covered that, so we'll move on. Yeah, I'll skim through that as well. That there was just to show you again how short an answer can be for 10 marks. Like so, for a huge amount of percent in your leaving cert, 2.5% of your leaving cert, you can get that in 5 lines, 4.5 lines. Okay, so but just time wise, I'm conscious. We'll move on. Okay, illustrate. We've kind of covered this. You have to give the example. The main thing is then you still give a statement or heading and develop it, and then give an example. And I touched on that already earlier. Try and give real life examples where possible. So there's not a huge amount to dwell on with that. Okay, so that brings us on to page 9. We have evaluate then. So this is a big one that causes panic as well. So people supposed to be the emoji eyes, people kind of aren't certain what to do with evaluate. Okay, so we'll have a little look at it. The main thing the examiner wants to see there, or what you're supposed to be doing, is stating a preference and then supporting that reasons. Okay, so you give your opinion. You go, I think this is good because of X, Y, Z. I think this is bad because of ABC. So you take a position and then you try and support that position with evidence. What they're not looking for you to do is just give another kind of state, explain, relate kind of keywords type thing. They want it to be kind of your opinion, or for you to express some kind of opinion for it. Now, what I would encourage students to do is potentially, like, just say you're evaluating the CCPC, you might give a couple of points on, provide information on their website, whatever, on their website, whatever, and then you might hold one of the points back for your evaluation. And then expand it like that way, like they help protect consumers from being exploited by monitoring mergers and takeovers so that no one firm controls the market. So your opinion is that it's useful because it helps them get protected, okay, or not get exploited. So the chief examiner, who does a report on the paper every now and then, they noted that they should be genuine attempt to actually give an opinion, not just textbook knowledge. So try and, like, that's what I kind of say to students, like, you want to use the evidence that you have, which is like, I know the CCPC blocks mergers and takeovers, and then I want to give that as to, like, make an attempt to put that into my own thoughts. Like, I think that's great because if they didn't block mergers and takeovers, consumers could get ripped off a lot more often with higher prices if there was a dominant firm. And like that there would be a good evaluation because I'm expressing an opinion and I have a bit of evidence for it. And I'm not just rewriting it like a normal leaving cert answer. So try and get some kind of like preference for something and then back it up. Okay, and I kind of gave an example of that there, but if we just look at the evaluation for a bit there, it allows consumers to take action without huge legal fees for a solicitor. So like, again, like what I did there, like that, the key word for the small claims is that you don't need a solicitor, there's no legal fees, that's worth marks. So I held that for the evaluation and then put it into like having a preference or whatever, like, there won't be huge legal fees. So it kind of made it that kind of less formal to have it as my kind of opinion for it. And my opinion there would have limited me making a complaint or whatever. Okay, the other ones there, analyze. It can be just good or bad things about it. distinguish between, I would say that the main thing is just like individually explain each term, deal with them separately, don't get kind of muddled or cross between. And then the mini ABQ here, just to kind of fly through one, there was a question on Intes, and I kind of talked about it earlier. It was basically around that if it, like let's read it here. Although it's a hard, Beaverton PLC is a global manufacturer of soft drinks. It developed Intes, a new sugar-free soft drink, which we launched in the market in September 2019. Okay, so this here then is your like mini ABQ type thing. It's a long question. So in A part 1, we have explained the factors that should be considered before deciding on the price to charge consumers. So you can see here, there is no mention of Intes or Beaverton, two weird names to pronounce. So therefore, you do not need to mention them in your answer. Okay, and let's just have a look here at that. I wrote what image you want for your product, and you can see here the image basically picks up 3 marks, and then Rolex use a high premium price reflected to very high quality. Okay, so therefore we're getting our 3 marks for that. So you can see nothing to do with Intes. I mentioned Rolex there. You can also note there was no need to mention Rolex because it says explain here and not illustrate, but using an example, absolutely fine. If it can help support your answer, great. I would just be conscious that it definitely want keywords in there first and foremost. And then if you wanted to use it alongside an example, great. But the keywords will matter a lot, okay? So that's a very high quality, basically image, high price, high quality is kind of what's getting the marks there for that. So I got 6 out of 6 for that. And then if you can see part 2, outline the pricing strategy best suited to the introductory stage of Intes and explain the reason for your choice. So here we have to apply it not just to Intes, but also to the introductory stage. So I would say the one that kind of jumps out there, and you can see there's going to be 3 sets of marks for it. So penetration pricing there is going to get you marks, and then saying what that is. So that's kind of your state bit. You're explaining it. It's a lower price to help build a market share. And then your 2 marks here is your relate bit. And I started talking about Red Bull and stuff like that, because it was a soft drink. So I was making it relate to Intes for that. So that was able to pick up full marks there. But it's just about whether or not when you get one of these little mini stories, if the business isn't in the question, you don't need it in your answer. If it's in the question, you need to reference it in your answer with the keywords. Okay.
There's just one question there before you go on now. You might come on to this, but I just got how should you answer a discuss question, and then what style of questions should you really be using the SER method for?
Yeah, I suppose like the discuss thing is probably, that's been around a while, or there was a distinction that it was kind of to avoid headings for a while. Like as far as chatting with different people, like the keywords really are what matter now. I wouldn't panic too much with it. Like technically when you look at the answer here for the part 1 there, okay, so that's what I was saying. I'm saying how I would encourage students to answer the paper. Your teacher might say never use a heading. They might say always use a heading, and they might say write essays, and I'm saying don't write essays. All of those ways you could end up getting a H1 with it, like, but I'm just trying to show you, explain, I suppose, what I would encourage my students to do. So what I nearly like is like with the statement, I suppose students often think that means you should just give a word, or like you have to give a title or heading, but writing a full sentence as your statement is absolutely fine. And then I personally like to write a sentence, and then even if there's a bit of room to start a new sentence at the end of the line, just come down and start the new sentence on the next line. And what that does, I suppose, is nearly reinforces the examiner. Here, I'm saying something here, I want you to give me marks for it. And I'm saying something down here that I want you to give me marks for as well. Like it can be a good way to kind of train yourself into just trying to deliver something that's relevant the whole time. Like it's not quite bullet points, because people would say, should you use bullet points? And I suppose in my head, a bullet point is when you just write one sentence and then you skip the line and you move on to the next thing. That's just not going to get you top marks, because you have to expand stuff, you have to explain stuff. But I kind of like a kind of nearly like mini bullet approach for each point with the state, explain, relate type thing on it. So I wouldn't be getting caught up too much there in the discuss verb for that, because once you get the good stuff in, like if it's presented like that, you're going to be fine there, where you're stating something, expanding it, and then relating it if you need to for that. So I think Yeah, that would be how I would lay it out. The other thing I would do when I'm laying it out is skip lines between everything, so you've got time to come back. Like, so I wouldn't be worrying too much about paper. Like, you know, so just say that was explained factors. So I would like write those 3 lines, and then I'd leave 3 lines of a gap, and then I'd write my next point, and just spread it out so that if you do finish early, you can come back and you can add another sentence in. You can add an example here. You might remember a keyword to add there. So just really like lay out your work nice and neatly. It's also much easier to correct when you're looking at it and it's broken up nicely. Don't try and cram stuff in. I would avoid like essay style stuff, using long introductions and different things like that. I think, did I cover that, Chloe? I'm not sure. I kind of lost myself in the middle of it with that.
No, that was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. And then let's have a look at good heading, bad heading, and then I'll kind of talk through a few of the notes, and then we'll get stuck into the ABQ then in a little bit. Okay. So this is kind of, I suppose this touches on what I was mentioning there about like using a title or like a one-word kind of heading, or not saying anything, the heading with the kind of increased higher lower type thing, and it kind of plays out here. Okay. So in 2018, it was outline. So outline is just a state, explain, relate. So yeah, sorry, that was what was asked. When do you know how to use the state, explain, relate? I'd be using it just like there wouldn't be a reason not to use it anywhere. Like you don't necessarily need a relate when it just says explain or outline. You do need to relate something then if it says for a business of your choice, or for a chocolate business, or for M6 Motors. So it normally, like the minimum you're going to need to give in any question really is a state and an explain, or 2 kind of points of info. And then if it says evaluate, you're going to have to, the relate bit is giving your opinion. If it says illustrate, the relate bit is giving an example or whatever it is as well. If it mentions a business, the relate bit is adding a little bit on about a business. Okay, but like I said earlier, if you were to give an example or relate stuff in any question, you can still get additional marks. You won't lose marks. The only technical time you could lose marks from something you've written is if you kind of contradicted yourself and the examiner felt that you were just throwing everything down and you didn't actually know it. So it's basically like you're writing, this looks red, this looks blue, and the 2 sentences just don't make sense together. Like technically that should be a 0 because there's a lack of understanding there. But if you just try and expand your point, like you're not going to lose marks unless it's a total contradiction of what you've written. Okay, let's have a look. It was outline the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so another question I would get asked there is, and I'm trying to jam a lot in here, so sorry if I'm flying around the place, but the end, but people go, how much you need? I would say a minimum of 1 of both, and you could shoot for 2 of each. In recent years, when they've looked for like benefits and challenges, advantages and disadvantages for a 20 marker, they've tended to give marks for 2 of one and 1 of the other. So you could give whichever way you want, 1 of one and 2 of the other, or 2 of one and 1 of the other. But I would tell my students there, if you give 2 of both, you're going to get your best ones. So just say the first answer you give isn't that great and your other 3 are perfect. You get 20 out of 20. You don't lose marks because the one you wrote first was the one you wrote first. So I would personally just give 2 of both, and then you're covered if they decide everyone has answered that question really well. So let's give marks for needing 4 points, or if they decide, look, let's give marks for 3, their best 1 from one side and 2 from the other. Okay, and then it's for a business in the fast food sector. Okay, so this means here we have to relate it to the fast food sector in order to get the full marks. Of choosing franchising, so the kind of keywords we need there is pretty much for the franchising bit as a method of business expansion. Okay, so here then you're basically getting marks for saying the advantage or disadvantage, and then the expansion is essentially explaining how a fast food franchise would benefit from that. Okay, so here I have said quick or fast expansion. So this quick and fast thing is exactly what I'm saying, like increase, decrease, higher, lower. Quick is great. Get a verb in there is ultimately what we're saying. Get something that is an action. Okay, so quick is much better than just writing expansion. So I'm getting the 4 marks for that because that is an advantage of a fast food franchise, using a franchise. So if I'm going to open up my own pizza takeaway, and I can be Duffy's Pizza or I could be Domino's Pizza, if I'm going to be expanding my own pizza, so I own my own pizza business, if I wanted to try and open up all my own restaurants, it's going to be slow. If I let someone else open a Duffy's Pizza and get some of the profits, it's going to be faster. So that's what we're trying to explain. It's worth noting there, actually, if franchising was to come up for your exam, If it comes up in the part 2 of your long questions from 5 to 8, which it has come up here, then it is Unit 5 expansion. So it's about a business itself expanding. Okay, so it's about the fast food sector expanding. So like a McDonald's growing. Okay, so you answer it from the point of view of the franchisor, which is the person who owns McDonald's. So you think about Ronald there, and you're going, right, what's he benefit from it growing? And then if it's asked in the part 1 of the long question, so with Unit 6, it's to do with the franchisee. So it would be me deciding to open my own pizzeria, and the advantages of me paying Domino's to be allowed to be at Domino's are opening up just as my own Duffy's Pizza. Okay, so the franchisee is me in that case. That's going to appear in Unit 6 or question 2, and the franchisor is always going to be in the second half of the longs because it's a Unit 5. Okay, but anyway, so we have our benefit of the fast food sector. So now we just need to link it in. Franchisees are going to finance the opening of the new restaurant, so existing businesses don't need to increase debt or equity in order to expand. So that's just well explained, good keywords, kind of to the point. But the main thing I wanted to show you here was this bit here. I want to show you like a crap heading, and this is a crap heading. Okay, so I wrote there standard or brand name. Okay, so that by itself doesn't really mean anything because it hasn't said whether the brand name is better or worse. So it's unclear if that's an advantage or a disadvantage even. So that's a crap heading. Don't do that because it's missing kind of a verb. Now, I ended up getting full marks for it because I did kind of give the benefit and explained it there. But I suppose the point of this here is to try and show you, just like make sure if you're going to write a heading or a statement or whatever it is to start, that you score from it, like, you know, you get marks for it. So how could that be improved? There's a big risk of franchisers that a new franchise opens and the quality of the fast food or service isn't good. With social media, issues could go viral quickly, damaging the brand's reputation, negatively impacting sales. Okay, so it's a really well explained answer in the end anyway. But if I had it written here like damage to brand name or risk to brand name, I would have already picked up 3 marks here. So you just have to do way less work down there. And that's kind of what I want to show from that. Okay, now
just before you move on, Gavin, there was just one question specifically on that, I suppose. Someone just said, do you need to, and you've kind of answered it in what you said there, do you need to give subheading to make it clear that it's an advantage versus a disadvantage?
Yeah, I definitely would. Like I kind of call that with my students like signposting. I would say like the more you can signpost in your exam, the better. Like the more you can let the examiner know, this is what I'm telling you here, so give me the marks, you know, I would say the better. I think I actually did have that. I cropped it out, but you can see like the lines are kind of missing. So I would 100% say advantages and then give 2, disadvantages, give 2. I would just put like an overall title on it. Or like you could literally just write like A beside it here and D beside it here. Just let the examiner know what you're answering there for that.
Perfect.
Okay, and similar with the evaluation, I suppose we didn't say that earlier. I would, like, if I was like stating and explaining and I was given my keywords for that there and I was going to do my evaluation, I would just write like EV ... So you're just, again, signposting the examiner, I'm about to like tell you my opinion on something here. So it's just easier for them. They'll be in that kind of like, you know, momentum of going, right, 2 for this, 3 for this. Okay, so do they have an evaluation yet? They have one here. And it's just going to make it much easier for them to correct it and kind of go through it and see it and stuff like that. So I would say like you don't need to write the state explain bits at all. But if you had them in, there'd be no negatives or no harm in it. But I would try and certainly be thinking when you're writing your answer that you see an S and an S and E and an or, so that you're like staying tight to it and being concise to it. Okay, now, and because it's saying that students, I suppose I tried to put together like how to study it better. So identify what matters, okay? So like reduce how much you need to learn by focusing on the keywords. And I'd say people are ready to throw their phone at the wall or something because I've said keywords about 100 times. But essentially, like really try and, like the material's huge. There's loads there. So if you just want to strip out the other stuff that's kind of filler and focus in on what matters. I have kind of keyword pages done. Going through all the past papers and marking schemes will really help as well. Using flashcards and Quizlets would probably help as well. And just try and really narrow down exactly what matters and what doesn't. Okay. Active learning, another big mistake I would just find with my students over the years is they just read and rewrite notes, and you kind of, it's a lot of action, a lot of like motion, but not much action. You kind of feel like you're going somewhere because you're covering the course. it's easy to do, but you really want to just test yourself. Like, you could summarize stuff like mind maps, whatever it is, self-test and study. You can teach concepts to other people. If you try and explain something to someone, you're going to know it better. So just really avoid there just writing out notes over and over and over. Okay. Time yourself. This is a big one. Like, if you really want to get better, make sure you're doing it under time pressure. So in study, like if you got, say, a 20-mark question for homework, and you could just go open the book, get the past paper questions, make a cup of tea, just write it all over, copy it out, and you're done, and you think, great, I'm not in trouble tomorrow, I've got it done. I reckon I knew that anyway. Like, you're just going to be kidding yourself. What would be much better would be to even like study it for a couple of minutes, close your book, start the clock, give yourself it's 10 minutes per 20 marks is a ballpark guide. The good student really wants to be getting down to around 7-8 minutes per 20 marker, but you have to practice it. So like what I do a lot in class would be like give them a set time limit. I put a big timer on the board, and then I get them to answer a question under time pressure. And that's where like you can make little mistakes. You might forget the keywords. You might forget to relate the question. And if you don't find those little bits out and kind of work on them, then you're not going to get better at them, and you're going to make those mistakes in the leaving cert. So timing yourself would be a big thing there. Okay, and then focus on clear goals. So again, like it's a big syllabus, but the main thing is that I suppose focus, making sure you know how much different stuff is in each chapter, and giving enough time to each of them. Don't just focus on the types of the chapters that you like, or the topics you like, and don't just sit down and go, I'm doing business chapter 6 today. Make sure it's a specific part of chapter 6, that when you have left your study, you know what you've learned and done, and you weren't just kind of mindlessly like kind of reading and enjoying it, because it's a grand subject to just read through, and you kind of feel when you reread something that you learned in class, you kind of think to yourself, oh, this is not bad, I kind of know that. But if I then 20 minutes later got you to try and write it, you might not have a clue. So just making sure that you're going, right, no, I'm studying organization structures tonight, and I want to know the advantages and disadvantages of functional matrix when I finish. And then that's your target. And you test yourself on it, and you test yourself on it the next day and check, have you actually gotten anything out of it, instead of just studying business in general. Okay, and then self-assessment. So regularly evaluate your understanding. I suppose what I really, really encourage is like, try and find out what you don't know. So I would give a lot of blank kind of keyword pages, which I'll show you now in a few minutes, and get my students to like fill them in for the first 10 minutes of class and just check what they don't know. And I suppose the big thing is when you check what you don't know, so just say you write out, it's enterprise skills and characteristics, and you forget 2 keywords, you actually open up your notes or your book, and then you highlight the ones that you didn't get, so that every time you go to study your book now, the ones that are highlighted are the ones that your brain hasn't remembered yet, essentially. So they're the ones I need to learn first. So keep on trying to mark or make a note of what you haven't learned yet, what's not stuck in your brain, so that you can try and just focus on learning that stuff instead of testing yourself on the same things that you already know. Okay. Yeah, what I like to do is actually the mini whiteboards. I use them a lot in class, and I know a lot of students I teach use them in study. So the little A4 whiteboards, you can get them in Eason's in different places. And I would literally really encourage them to have them in study. So just say they have to study Maslow, I'm just picking, it's a really easy one to pick. Before they even start studying, whiteboard out, write out what they know about Maslow. Now, 2 minutes, like that's quickly done. You're checking what's in your brain. You realize, okay, I know the 3 stages. I'm not sure if esteem comes first or not. Then you go into your notes, you read through it, you kind of have a look through, and you get up to speed on it. Then you kind of close your book, you do a past paper question, you put your timer on for 8 minutes, and you try and answer it now because you've refreshed yourself on it. Then you open up the market scheme and check if how you did in it, if there was anything you missed. And then to wrap up, you could close everything again and have another go at your whiteboard. And like 30 minutes later, there's so much activity in that, a few different ways of like getting your brain to process the information instead of just rewriting the notes or copying the page on Maslow into a page in your A4 pad or into a homework sheet that you got given just to tick the box. So real active learning would be important. Okay, now these recent trends and likely topics, I mean, who doesn't love an L crystal ball emoji and a teacher kind of trying to tell you what they think will come up or whatever, but they are just trends. Like all I do is kind of look at all the different topics that have come up over the years and try and look at, right, if I was making the paper, what might I put on it? So like there's no insight into it. It's just you know, what topics I think are must knows, and I'm making kind of handouts that teachers will have, and you'll probably get, that are like the must knows for this year. It's not, absolutely not, to get my disclaimer in saying just study that and you're gonna nail it, but it's just kind of more likely things, or you know, just to look at trends. How often does this come up? How important is it when I'm prioritizing my work? So you can kind of look through them. You know, for this, I kind of just put them up here, like the consumer price, like kind of information around misleading advertising could potentially come up. I think a big thing that could be likely would be like the service provider question. If I was to crystal ball anything from that would be the kind of likely question maybe from that. It's worth noting, like, this right to cancel came up there in 2023, and that was only a recent kind of change to legislation. It was to do with the EU, and there's a new Consumer Act, the Consumer Rights Act. It was November 22 it came in, so they could potentially look to put something up on it, like I'll actually put something up on my site about it up in the teacher resources during the week. But they kind of updated the law and brought all the consumer laws into one place, and they added in stuff around like digital products. So if you buy Netflix, what are your rights? Where that probably wasn't covered. You know, was 1980. I think it's on there. So there's potential for it to come up now. The thing is, when this right to cancel came up, like, you know, students came out of tests, nobody had a clue really, because they were just learning off past papers and books, and none of them really had that updated. So they, in the end, it was only worth 2 marks. Don't panic too much if something comes up that you've never seen before and you're certain was never asked, because in likelihood, no student's going to do that well at it. So therefore, they're not going to probably allot a huge amount of marks for it. So you would have been 0.5% down there for the right to cancel thing. But that right to cancel there is when you buy something from a distance, like online, you have 14 days to return it for a full refund without needing a reason to return it. Like, you know, it wasn't broken or anything like that. It's just in the instance that you buy something where you don't get to physically see it at the time of buying it, you have this cooling off right to cancel period for that. So there was something about the new thing. How it's slightly different is the remedies. So we would have had the 3 R's, refund, repair, and replace. There's also now reduced prices, the new thing that has come into the 2022 Act, where if you had something for, say, like a year and a half and it stopped working, but you'd expect it to last longer, you could go back and you might be entitled to a full refund, and what you might get is a reduced price. So essentially, it's like a partial refund, but in the legislation now, it appears like that it's a reduced price. Or potentially they could ask something maybe around a digital product, what are your rights? And in that, then there's a kind of cooling off period for that. I'll get something up on the site anyway, not to kind of go through too much. But all those trends are just trends that are just something to give you a guide. Okay, and then when I'm talking about keywords, this is what I mean then, like knowing what you're supposed to know. If you only learned these keyword pages, you'd probably be doing pretty good in nearly all cases. So could something come up that isn't in these keyword pages? Absolutely. That's why a textbook is 500 pages long and these keyword pages are 40 pages long. Like it does condense all the stuff down. So you're not guaranteed that just knowing these will get you definite full marks in every single question, but it's a really, really good place to start, I suppose. So I just included some of them. So like what I was saying is, if you just focus in on learning them, and you know, you might remake them into a mind map yourself or whatever, or come up with a way of trying to understand them better rather than being packed onto one page, you could. And then what you could do then is like take photocopies of these blank pages, and for like 10 minutes and study, you know, try and fill in as much as you know. Open your keyword page that has all the information on it and highlight the bits that you didn't get. Repeat. Like they reckon for the forgetting curve, I think, or whatever, if you Google the forgetting curve, you can have a look. But if you don't essentially revisit something that you've studied, it's going to disappear out of your brain. It's obviously disappeared out of mine. I should have looked over it. But when you revisit it for a few minutes each time, it's going to bump back how much you remember each time. So I think these blank pages and the little mini A4 whiteboards are a great way to go about doing that. You know, actively going, right, what do I know about provision for services? Like this here is one that I'm picking out to come up this year. When you're sitting and you're leaving, so you can be like, he said that, yeah. And then hopefully you'll remember it. Okay, but anyway, they're the blank sheets, and there was a link to like a Quizlet, which is the flashcards online. But let's just have an actual go with, like, you know, someone's asking there, how do you know how to do state explain relate, whatever. Let's just do it for this one. We'll go through the page. That didn't come up on the page, but sorry, it's page 18 there. Okay, practice question on Unit 1. So this came up in the deferred paper in 2023, and it hasn't actually been up as a long question in ages. It came up in 2019 ABQ, I think. But so I fancy it for a long question if they were to ask the Sale and Goods Supply Service Act. So we have the verb illustrate, okay? So what that means there is I would just like to remind myself, I have to give an example. So it means then we're going to have to state and explain and then give your example, not just give an example. Okay, using examples, so they were kind of kind to us here, so that's your illustrate bit. The legal duties of service providers as set out in the Sale and Goods Supply Service Act. Okay, so to start then, yeah, and like I'm changing color pen here just out of habit. You can write in one color pen. Your teacher might say you have to put headings in whatever. That's fine as well. Like, you know, anything you can do for to make it easier for the examiner to see the good keywords they have in there, do it. If it's using a different color pen, amazing. If you write really fast and you want to write your keywords in a blue pen and the rest in a black pen, amazing. The only problem you might run into is if you're trying to wing it a bit in the question and you don't know what the keyword is, and then you don't know which one to make a different color. But I wouldn't overthink it anyway, but do everything you can to make sure the examiner sees a keyword. So if that means using blue and black pen and alternating, great. Okay, let's have a look. So service provider. So what are the legal duties of them? Okay, so that they have the necessary skill. Okay, so just for writing that there, I'm going to pick up marks. So this was a 15 marker, so it's likely it's going to be like, say, 2 + 2 + 1. So in that instance there, if it was 2 + 2 + 1, I'm going to get 2 marks for saying that. Okay, now I need to expand on that and explain what that means. Okay, so the service provider, I just skipped a line there myself just because my writing's kind of crap on this iPad. You wouldn't have to necessarily skip it, but so the service provider must have any qualification or relevant experience, or you could use the word like competence, meaning like they have to be kind of good at doing something. So if you think of like a waiting service in a coffee shop or a restaurant, they might necessarily have a qualification to do it, but they need to be competent. They need to like not spill food on you or pour your drink over you or whatever. Okay, so how much of those keywords would you really need? Like, you know, if I saw qualifications and skills here, I'd be kind of pretty much happy that you've given your statement and you've explained it with a relevant keyword, so you're kind of getting the marks there for that. This here just kind of hammers it home. It makes you kind of sure of it. Okay, but we haven't written much, and that's kind of important. And then we want to give our example here. So, you know, like a pilot flying your plane should have a license. Yeah, my writing is bad at the best of times, but that's bad. Okay, that's anyway, should have a license. Okay, and then we're picking up the marks for that. Now, I think in the marking scheme for the deferred paper was they put it as 2 + 3, but if that question came up this year, I would really expect it to be 3 sets like that. So we have our state bit, we have our explain bit, and we have our example. Okay, we're not writing much, but we've answered the question and then we move on. So I would definitely look over that, and that's how I would go about kind of laying that kind of question out, so that we've given our example there. Okay, so let's nudge on. So there's a marking scheme for it. You can have a look. That was the 2019 ABQ, so you can see that that's kind of the one we just did there. Like I was basically getting marks there for saying necessary skills and qualifications, and then a flight on a plane should be provided by a pilot. So it was the same stuff that I was kind of saying. So we've kind of given what it should be and then given an example of it. So you can see that's fine for that. There's some just practice questions and kind of schemes there that I put in just to put stuff in. I wasn't sure how long things would take, but I'm going to move on because I'd like to get into the ABQ. There is on 30, I just picked out kind of 2 chapters. I picked out chapter the chapter we were just on there, and then chapter 5 and 6 here. So it's chapter 2 and chapter 5/6, like leading and motivating, just to have 2 examples of the kind of worksheets that I've done with the kind of trends things for it. You can see here with this, like delegation hasn't been up for a few years, so I would definitely have it at the top of my list. And then McGregor theory X there hasn't been up, and McGregor Y was up here. So if I was to pick one from that, I would say McGregor X. The other thing is you can see Maslow comes up a good bit. So it would not be unlikely for Maslow to come up. And potentially, like the leading, motivating, communicating came up in the ABQ. There's a potential for Maslow to maybe, if I was writing an ABQ, it's a lovely one to write in because it's in stages. They have to be in order. So it's an easy one to kind of write into an ABQ. So I wouldn't rule it out as an outside chance, 33-1 shot for the ABQ. I would know Maslow for this year's exam, ultimately. Okay. So keyword pages, kind of, again, like for time, let's push on. You can go through them yourself. The only thing then that I would like to do, I suppose, with it is show you how much you need to write for Maslow again, just to re-emphasize, if you were going to leave here this evening, the take-home point is quality matters. Don't write too much, because the amount of words you put in doesn't matter. It's what those words are that really matter. So if we look here on page 42, it's a question that came up on Maslow. Okay, so 2019 question 4, it's about Hexagon. Hexagon Solutions, global software, blah, blah, blah. So they kind of go through some stuff. It offers competitive salaries, long-term contracts, team structure, and work together. The staff ideas are accepted, and they support further studies. Okay, so they're giving you little bits here, but bear in mind this is a long question as opposed to an ABQ, so therefore you don't need to quote it in direct quotes. If they ask about Hexagon in the question, which they do, you just need to refer to it. So you just need to kind of mention it. It doesn't have to be word for word or anything like that, but it should be the bits that they've talked about in that little mini story. Okay, so we have outlines. You can see outline. Okay, doesn't mean give an example yet. Outline just means state and explain so far. The different stages. Stages is a very important word there in your leaving cert, because stages basically has to be in order. I don't know, there was a comment in there, I think it was how many marks would you lose? I'm guessing it might have been about stages. I didn't see the rest. But if you put something out of order, you wouldn't get marks for the ones that are out of order. So even if it's the correct keywords and stuff, so if you had the first stage right and the last 2 right and 2 and 3 were out of order, you would only get marks for the first and the fourth and the fifth. Okay, and then here we have the word illustrate. So illustrate, that's now we know we're going to have to get our example in as well. So it's going to be a state, explain, relate there. And it's the relate bit is going to be to do with Hexagon, because Hexagon is mentioned in the question. So your example bit needs to reference Hexagon. Okay, so you can see it was a 20 marker. There's 5 stages, so you needed all 5 stages. So it's going to be 4 marks, 1 for stating, 2 for explaining, and 1 for linking to Hexagon. So I'm going to show you how little then, like we kind of need. So the first thing then is like your physical or physiological needs. Just writing that, we're going to get 1 mark. Okay, so what is that? Like it's the need for the basics. Okay, so like the need for basic human needs, I suppose, is what we're saying, like food, shelter. Like I have answered there what physical needs is. If I was to read that as someone, or if a student wrote that and I didn't know them, I can tell that they understand exactly what they're talking about. So you don't really actually need much more than that at all. Like that's your state and explain, and then your example then is linking it to Hexagon. So how do Hexagon let humans provide for their basic needs? They give them money. So like the competitive salaries there is kind of what we're saying here. So Hexagon give competitive salaries. So people can afford food or afford basics. Okay, and that there is absolutely enough. Okay, so it's correct, it's keywords, it's to the point, it's the dream answer. If I'm an examiner and I'm correcting those kind of answers all summer, it's going to make my day, because I'll be finished early. I'll be able to go out to play golf, go for a cycle, whatever it is, because you'll be flying through them because it's just really presented very nicely. And then I won't I won't get into it too much here. I'll just show you here the on the next page. So we have, physiological, I should have written, I think I bottled it just for the spelling on camera. So we have physiological or physical needs, gets you a mark. Need for food or shelter, 2 marks, and then the competitive salaries, you can see, gets you the 1 mark. Okay, so we have safety, 1 mark, feel secure, 2 marks, long-term contract, 1 mark. That's all that matters. Like the keywords matter, not like getting loads of kind of filler and bluff type of stuff in. Okay, so I think that's just over half of an A4 page. I think it's like, less than 2/3 of an A4 page, but it's a 20 marker. Again, no one in the country is getting more marks than that answer. So you don't need, like, it's not like you're up against someone in history or English where it's essays and you really have to be creative and, romantic with your language and come up with some great stuff. It's just hit them with what matters and try not hide it behind loads and loads of words. Don't get it lost in your answer. And you can see they're very much sticking to that kind of state, explain, relate bit, starting each of them on a new sentence, not worrying if like there was space here to kind of follow on with that sentence, but no, like just kind of put it in order on top of each other. And like I was saying there, if you were trying to give 2 points of information, I would still do that as well. Like, start back over at the margin so that you're just trying to remind the examiner, hey, I'm giving you another piece of information here. Give me some more marks. Like that's my take on it there for that. Okay, so before, theory, McGregor theory X, if we get a crystal ball emoji in there as well. That was, I reckon that could kind of come up here. And I suppose the big thing for, if it does come up, is when it's implications, we want to be talking, that's where our arrows come into it, show something going up, show something going down. And then how McGregor theory X causes that. So X, I would say, for people who struggle with, is X or Y, whichever, X is like the bad one. So X is like the negative. So I think of X as being negative in my head. So I think my employees, I'm a manager, and I think my employees hate work. They don't want to be here. How do I treat them? So that's X, bad. I think my workers are bad. Okay, so if I think that they hate work, then I'm going to have to just throw money at them to motivate them. I'm not going to ask them for any input or have brainstorming meetings because they mightn't care about the place, So I'm just going to tell them what to do and pay them to do it. And that's kind of, what are the implications of that? Okay, the implications would be no innovation. There's little entrepreneurship because staff don't offer ideas, because they don't feel listened to, because they're just told what to do. It's more of an autocratic style leadership. So therefore, there's low staff morale or higher staff turnover. Higher staff turnover is always a good one just to reference for many answers in Leaving Cert Business with the course at the moment, but referencing that. So staff turnover, if you don't know what it is, it's how quickly the amount of staff you have leave and you have to get more staff. So high staff turnover is bad, low staff turnover good, because your staff stays working with you for longer. So one, they can get promoted and become more skilled and better for continuity of the business, and also really good, then you don't have to spend time recruiting and selecting more workers, advertising, doing interviews, stuff like that. So generally a low staff turnover is a good thing. Okay, so I kind of went through it there. I would definitely know that stuff for this year anyway, and hopefully you cover it and you get rewarded if it comes up. Okay, so just before the ABQ, I suppose if there was anything there, Chloe, I don't know if anything had come up or any questions for it, and then I'll
There was just one kind of generic question that said, if you're not asked specifically, like explain to or explain this or that, how many points should you be given if it's not specifically specified?
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, like for a 20 marker, historically, it used to be that you just divided it by 5. So a 20 marker would mean 4 points. In more recent times, it seems that they split it into 3. Again, I would be pushing you, if you can apply some of the stuff that I'm trying to tell you to do tonight, I think you're going to have an awful lot more time left over in your exam. So there's going to be scope to give extra points. And the key thing to remember there is that, I think I said earlier, like the first point you give doesn't have to count. So you could give, say it's on enterprise skills and characteristics, and the first one you give, your keywords aren't great, so you don't get full marks. But if you give 5 of them, you can get full marks for the next 4. So for me, I would make sure you leave space so you've got time to come back and add ones. Like you might put a little dot on your page to remind you one of them was a bit ropey and you might want to add another one if you have time and stuff. So I would shoot for 4 in most cases, and then rarely 5. Like I suppose with Maslow, it's quite specific. like there's no rule and it's not very clear, and nobody knows when you're sitting it. I suppose it probably depends on how well people do. If everyone did brilliant in every single question, I suppose grades kind of fit into bell curves and stuff. So something will have to be done with marks to try and separate out people and make sure that H1 people stand out, that the top ones stand out, and get more marks. So that kind of would probably get done as part of it, the marking of it. So I suppose you don't know, rarely more than 4. If it was a 30 marker, it could potentially be 5, but sometimes it might be 3 as well. So it's hard to know. The best way to cover yourself and prepare for it is to, I suppose, shoot for 4, unless it was something specific like Maslow, where it'd be 5, or stages of new product development, where it'd be 7. Like it would be rare, but not. But it has been done where you would need all 7. So lately, what they have done is kind of giving you a guide on it, like the next 4 stages after concept development and things like that. So if in doubt, put a little dot on the side of your page, leave space to add an answer in, go through the rest of your exam, and then come back and add stuff in, rather than trying to give an extra point for each one, running out of time and losing 60 marks. That would be my general guidance around that.
There was just one other one. You actually mentioned enterprise skills and characteristics. So there's just a question saying, for that, are they accepting generally human relations and time management in that enterprise skills and characteristics?
Yeah, I suppose that one just kind of varies. Again, I would imagine it's based on, like, the decision around is probably based on the answers. If loads of people give a certain thing, they're probably more likely to include. I don't know now. I'm just speaking from like what I perceive it to be. I suppose the best thing, my rule of thumb, or what I would work off, is the most recent marking scheme. So go to that and try and work from that. And with enterprise skills and characteristics, like it did come up in last year's ABQ. It has come up in back-to-back ABQ, so I would definitely do it. And that would be one thing that I would encourage students to give an extra point, because I find it's something that they feel they would know well, but then when they in the class exams that I give them, they actually don't score that well and they can leave stuff out. So that would be one instance where I would encourage students to give 5 rather than 4 points, just so that if you gave something like human relations and then they decided that it wasn't going to be acceptable, then you're kind of covered either way. Like human relations or persuasiveness, I would say generally fine. I know time management wasn't accepted prior, but I've seen it in a more recent marking scheme. So I suppose all I would do is update all my stuff based on most recent marking schemes, or what I know would definitely be included. With enterprise skills and characteristics, there's loads of them. So I would shoot for the ones that I would just be more confident on, but it can depend, which I suppose is a crap answer to hear when you want an answer to a question, but that would be my take on it anyway.
There's just 2 then that you might be touching on anyway in the ABQ section, but just before you go into it, just asking about, should you give examples as well as links, or is that too much? And then the other question was, for discuss in the ABQ, is it more of a conversation type answer, or should we be using state, explain, link?
Yeah, particularly in the ABQ, yeah, I definitely wouldn't worry about the verb discuss or meaning anything with it. Yeah, I would be going with your state, explain, relate. Like with that, I suppose what can be slightly different in the ABQ, because the question there was around the do you give an example or not, and I might have that might have come out of the sheet that I had up a few minutes ago, where it was the service provider and I was talking about a pilot, and that ABQ was actually to do with a wedding organizer or something. So what I would do with the ABQ generally is, like, you would state something. So just imagine imagine the question is on your management activities, which I suppose could be very likely this year. And the big thing with management activities is it's POC is what you want to remember. I used to tell people Paul O'Connell, but I think we've moved on from that. I'm not sure what you want to come up with some kind of little acronym there to remember that. POC for that. Okay, so it's planning, organizing, controlling. So what I would shoot to do then is, like, state something on planning. Okay, and then we're going to have to, our DQ down here is going to be our direct quote. So this is going to be like the link from the text. So we have marks there in the middle that we need to get. I would say just one sentence on planning there generally wouldn't be enough. So that's where an example could be used as a second point of an explanation. But I would say in the ABQ is the place that you kind of want to have 2 explanations or 2 points of development under a heading, particularly for something like managed activities, which is likely to be a 30 marker, and there's only 3 of them because it's planning, organizing, controlling. So when there's 10 marks going for it, I would definitely try and get like, it's likely these would be broken down. Like the marking scheme in this instance, for example, could be something like 2 marks for stating it, 4 marks for explaining, broken up into 2 plus 2, and then 2 marks for a direct quote. And if it was an evaluation, you might then have to give your opinion then as well. So like as that, like this here could potentially be an example, this second E here, but like I would encourage you, I would say don't do it for the ABQ. For any long question, give as many examples as you want as a point of development to add to your answer. That's great. I just wouldn't only use examples and expect to score marks for the keywords. So keywords still take priority over everything. If you want to use an example to explain it or to show understanding, I suppose they're the 2 main things an examiner needs to see. They need to see keywords to show that you've studied the course, and they need to see understanding, like you're not contradicting yourself. You actually have some idea about what you're talking about. So an example can help you with that understanding bit. So I would say I may have confused issues by showing that pilot thing as a development point, and it did end up getting marks there in it, but I would say as a rule of thumb, don't just give 2 things. So what I would do for planning, say, is give the definition of planning, you know, setting objectives, blah, blah, blah. And then potentially if in the ABQ text, there was something about a mission statement, I would then like explain what a mission statement is, that it's like the vision and the values of something. So if you got your definition and the explanation of what a mission statement is, that would be your 2 marks in here, and then you get your quote in as well. Okay, so that's how I would go about the ABQ kind of setup. We'll get in and have a look at one now though. Okay, yeah, so how to answer the ABQ. I was kind of saying about 45 minutes is what we're kind of looking at. Most spend too long and write too much. Like I would say like that is problem number 1. So hopefully if you haven't done your mock yet, that'd be a good place to time, if you don't time your whole exam, time your ABQ and see how long have we actually spent there. And just bear in mind, it's the same amount of marks as the shorts. So, you know, don't overspend time. Like the essence of it is you'll probably write a little bit more, so it needs a bit more time and you have to read stuff. But like, don't throw away marks with that. One strategy I would say to some students, now it depends. If you go into the exam and in your head you're like, oh, the ABQ, I'm like mad panicked about it, oh God, and you just want to deal with it and get it over and done with, obviously do it towards the start of the exam. If you can park the ABQ mentally till the end, I think it's probably in your interest time-wise to actually do the shorts and the long questions and come to the ABQ at the end when you've got 45 or 50 minutes left, because then you can't overwrite and you'll actually be a bit like tighter with it and conciser with it. So that is something that you could practice in your mocks or in a class exam or whatever. I would definitely practice ABQs in homework to time as well. You know, give yourself 40 minutes, have 4 ABQs and do like a lucky dip and pick out one, and then go and answer it in 40 minutes and see how you do, you know, because otherwise you won't know if you're going to overwrite. And I kind of covered that there. We have our state and explain bit. Like that generally is going to take up like 3/4 of the mark. So that's the most important thing. Ultimately, all the ABQ is a story to find out, have you learned the course? So do you know the keywords? And then can you apply them to a situation? So ultimately, showing those keywords is still going to be worth the vast majority of the marks. You know, the link to it or an evaluation or whatever is going to be maybe 20% of it, but like giving your textbook knowledge, knowing the good stuff is still going to be worth 80%. And the students that I would see who don't do well in the ABQ are the ones that overhype the story, and they're like, oh, John did this when he did this, and when he was setting up the wedding, he did this, this, and this, but they actually don't give the keywords from the course. They just talk about the story, and you're not going to do well there. Okay, you can't just write keywords and have no story. You get 0 for that as well. But what you want to do essentially is, so just say that planning thing that I was talking about a minute ago. If you know the managed activities has come up, planning has to be in the ABQ. So ultimately, you just need to find one sentence in that ABQ that has some reference to planning. So, you know, the overall vision for the business was to be the leading healthcare provider. Like that there is the mission statement. So therefore, you can pull that quote down and use it in planning, and then you can explain what planning is and explain what mission statement is, and you're going to get full marks for it. So but you couldn't get full marks without the mission statement thing and the planning definition thing, okay? And you can't get any marks if you don't find a link that's relevant to it. So what we really want to do is find a link, transfer it word for word down, and present the relevant keywords alongside it, and you'll score really, really well, okay? And we're looking to do that without like writing loads and loads and loads. And I suppose a big reason the ABQ is overwritten is because it's at the start of the exam, and you can see from like my 2018 script, like if you study loads and you know lots, you're gonna want to write lots and show off a lot, and that can backfire then time wise, because you just don't need to. Like you just need to. It's like a bank job: get in, get out. You know, like just get in, get the good stuff down, move on to the next question, and just back yourself that you've written enough, and like you'll score way better, and you'll have time to come back to it. So, the other thing then is just for an evaluate. Evaluate is the main time you really want to reference or get into the story. So I was saying there, if you get into the story too much and that's all you talk about, you won't do well because you'll miss keywords. But for the evaluate bit, after you've given those keywords and your link, that's when you kind of look at, John wasn't very good at quality control because they, due to the lack of inspections, there was a lot of returns last month, you know, like, and then you can evaluate that, like, you know, he wasn't very good because he wasn't checking up on whether or not the quality was high enough, and now he's lost sales or customers aren't happy. Okay, so if we look through, I have a kind of couple of examples of like the layout of answers there. I'll kind of let you go through it. One point of note, because I'm just conscious of time, and I'll get into how to structure an answer now, and then I'd say we'll leave it. One thing there is that when there's two parts, like explain the term entrepreneur. Okay, so sorry, I've gone on to page 48 there. When it's an explain the term thing or like define something, you don't actually need a link. So you can see here the marketing scheme for it is just 3 + 3. You're just saying what an entrepreneur is. And once you get the keywords for that, you know, personal financial risk and being creative or make a profit, you're going to pick up the marks for that. So you don't need a quote. If you give a quote, you don't lose any marks, but that would be the only time. And those part ones is the only time you actually don't have to put a link in. Otherwise, then you would need a link. So you can see here, this is like your kind of straightforward structure. This is the benefits of becoming an entrepreneur. So you can see here, you're going to get a state, explain, and a link bit. Okay, so to be your own boss. So that is your statement. That's worth 2 marks. Okay, being an entrepreneur means you have control and power in decision making. You can see that's your 3 marks. So you're explaining the benefit is you have ownership, you have a self-directed life, I think was the marketing scheme phrase or whatever it is, and you're showing how that comes about from being an entrepreneur. You run your business, so you have control of everything. So we have our state and explain, and then here we put in our direct quote. What I like and would strongly recommend is the use of those kind of quotation marks for it. And the key thing here is it has to be word for word from the text. Okay. Emma became frustrated with the limitations of working for other people. Now, I would get emails regularly from teachers and stuff and questions in class about the link. Like, do you have to put the whole sentence in or whatever? So you don't. You can see from different marketing schemes that the main thing that's important, I think, with links is like you could read any link and it would mean something by itself. So if it was just 2 words, like just say it was other people or became frustrated or, you know, the limitations, it doesn't really mean anything. So you want it to make sense as a standalone sentence. It definitely does not have to be a capital letter to a full stop, because once you include a relevant link, it's fine, but it does have to be word for word from the text, and it does have to be from a sentence. And what you're aiming to do, like just say there was a very long sentence with 2 links in it, I would definitely chop that in half, because you're trying to insert the relevant piece of the ABQ text that's relevant for the keywords you've given. And an examiner needs to see that the bit you picked out from the story matches the explanation of what you've given here. So in this instance here, I'm talking, the keywords here is about being your own boss, and the link from the ABQ then is about being frustrated, not being their own boss. So it's relevant. Okay, so it has to be a direct, relevant link. Direct meaning word for word, relevant meaning it matches. And if I was to then go on and give another sentence there that had another link, I should score 0 instead of this +2, because then the examiner doesn't know if I'm just bluffing and I'm putting in half the paragraph, you know. So you should only just put in what's relevant. I would say a minimum of 5-6 words, so that it acts like a standalone sentence that makes sense, and that should cover you. If you have a couple of words in extra, no problem, but don't like ... in the middle of a sentence, and don't reword it yourself. You won't get any marks for them. Okay, so that should give an insight into the kind of structure I would recommend for students anyway for approaching the ABQ with it. So let's go and have a look at doing it. Like that's just another example there. You have the evaluation bit down below. So yeah, so the only thing here that I would change from that answer, I think I put it in just to have a look, like I've your planning bit here, and I'm picking up marks. And then this is the definition of planning. So this is picking up marks as well. And then here, I probably just dumped in a lot of keywords, but it wasn't necessarily that relevant to the text. I talked about long-term plans, strategic, shorter-term operational, SWOT analysis. So what I would try and say that I would recommend you do for the second kind of point of development is make it relevant to the text. So I talked about the mission statement. If there was a sentence about their vision being to be the leading healthcare provider, that's a mission statement. So I would explain that then in the planning bit. So I would say like a mission statement is the long-term values and vision for the business, which John has in his healthcare or whatever. Okay. So it's not so much that you have to be talking about the story there. It's very much that you just need to give the relevant keywords to the ABQ text. And that's what I would try and push my students towards doing for that. So like definitions are good, or explanations of a plan that's from the text would be good there. And then you have your direct quote and you have your evaluation. And again, like here I say that gives them a future focus, allows them to set targets to achieve or whatever. So like you're trying to make it apply to them. Here I would very much mention the business name. So I didn't do it there, but I got away with it. But the name of the business or the name of the person. So in this instance, I would talk about Oakfield. I would say like Oakfield can focus on, the next season of weddings or whatever it is, make it relevant to the business rather than leaving it generic. And for those who can't read my crap writing, that says mention name of the business. Okay. So in your evaluation bit, I would try and mention the business name in it. Okay, 840, yeah, we're under pressure. Okay, so yeah, that's just a nice kind of classic again layout. Outline using examples, different types of planning, and you can see strategic, marks, explaining what strategic is, long-term planning, senior management, 10 years, that's getting this, and then your direct quote. And again, just like kind of starting it, so leaving this blank so that we start our quote down here, so the examiner can just come along and go, yeah, 3, 3, 2, and then move on. Okay, so that's just to kind of show that, that kind of structure there works. Okay, so I pulled out Unit 4 just to look at kind of some trends. So last year, managing change came up. Before that, there was a bit of insurance and tax and a bit of HRM. So Unit 4 comes up in 3-year cycles. So it hasn't been up then in a 2-3 or 2-4. So, and it's back up now. So you can see there in 17, it was kind of managing change as well. 16, source of finance, and 15, managing change. And 12 there, source of finance, HRM, and the impact of tech. So if I was to look at the trends there and try and get a download, I would say like the impact of tech has come up recently. So I could see that definitely coming up. HRM there, you can see kind of gets asked a little bit, and it is a couple of years ago now. But I would probably say the sources of finance then is the other one that jumps out. So if I was to have to put money on it, I would say source of finance would be my pick for it. But like, you can't leave too much out. In Unit 4, you're not going to leave anything out anyway, because you're going to be answering the long questions. So you'll have it all covered, but those would be ones that I would try and seek out questions to kind of practice on. I'd say probably a bit of HRM as well. But anyway, just to give you a steer on it. So what I did was I just pulled out some of the kind of keywords for it. So if you get asked a question on HRM, if you write down what I have here for the functions of HRM, you're going to get full marks, and then you just need to go and find a quote for it. So that's all I was looking to do there. We'll go and actually just do one now and have a look. This was also just the recent marking scheme from the impact of technology. I suppose with a question on impact, just make sure you apply it to different parts of the business. So the impact could be on, say, on staff. The impact could be on marketing. The impact could be on production. The impact could be on costs. So don't give like an impact of technology and 3 of them are on staff or 3 of them are on the consumer. Make sure that you give an impact to a different part of the business if you have to answer a question, whether it's the ABQ or a long question on the impact of something. It's similar to if a question comes up on stakeholders, like the social responsibilities of a business to its stakeholders. each part should be a different stakeholder. You wouldn't get 2 sets of marks for talking about 2 separate points to do with, say, the consumer for that. Okay. So yeah, and then this was sources of finance. So if sources of finance comes up, I suppose the key thing there to remember is that you should give one short, one medium, and one long-term source. The last time it came up, they referenced that in the question. But you just need to pick one of each, and you should be good. Hopefully, we 15 minutes, I suppose, to get through it. So let's have a look. Okay, this was a 2020 ABQ on HRM. So what we'll do then is quickly look at the functions of the human resource department. So yeah, if I'm answering ABQ, what should I do first? Okay, so what I would personally do and what I would tell students to do is not read it first. Again, your teacher might say the exact opposite, and I think we're about right. Like they're just different methods. Okay, I think because 80% of the marks are going to be going for what keywords you get down, the more important thing is to read the question and think about what keywords am I going to need here, and then go and read the text, rather than reading the text, reading the question, and going back to text. That's just my point of view, like my kind of strategy on it, or where I see it. Practice. You don't know until you practice. So do an ABQ tomorrow and like read the question first, get the keywords first, then go and answer it, see how you do. Next week, do an ABQ where you go through the text first and try and mark up anything that looks like it could be important, and then do the question, and then time yourself, practice. We're all different, so what I'm telling you could be different to what you need, and you need to figure out what you need the most. That's your job. Okay, I'm just giving you options. So what I would do is I would look at, if I was in the tester, I would tell students, okay, yeah, someone had said about the discuss thing, I wouldn't worry about it. Just give the function, explain what the function is, give the quote, good. And then Medway Devices is obviously the name of the ABQ text. So you have to you're giving your link is enough. You don't have to like explain Medway or relate it like you do in a long question. So human resource, like if what I would get my students to do is kind of get a bit of a brainstorm going, have a rough worksheet or whatever. So we have like, say, manpower planning, which is like checking if the right amount of numbers, making people redundant, or recruiting people. And we've recruitment and selection. So like job description, person specification, interview process, panel interview, that kind of stuff. Put myself under pressure now here to remember these. And we've like pay and rewards, or rewards, which are like your monetary and non-monetary, or financial and non-financial. So like profit sharing, wages, salaries, bonus, work from home, stuff like that. We've managing employee-employer relations, which is basically having good grievance procedures in place. That's always one that students never seem to know. Like a grievance procedure is in a business that there's clear methods of communication for someone to like complain or give out about something, so that everyone is treated the same and someone doesn't feel like, oh, you listen to Johnny but you never listen to me, or whatever. So a grievance procedure, if you have a grievance with something, you're not happy about something, and a procedure then is steps. So it's like, if as a worker you're not happy, there's a way that you can communicate that, and you're not worried that if I go and tell my boss I'm not happy, they're just going to fire me or whatever. So that's what it is anyway. It would be very unlikely they would ask you to explain that, but that's the key word I encourage for managing employee-employer relations. Okay, we have training and development then as well. So we've like your induction training, a new employee in a new workplace. Those would be the keywords for that. Or you'd have like on the job, or internal and external. And I am missing one, performance appraisal. Okay, so that is an evaluation with a worker to see how they're doing, how much they contribute to the business. It opens feedback, they can set targets, and highlight people who need training, etc. Those are the keywords. If you get them in, you're getting full marks. Okay, so now that we have jotted down the kind of keywords that we need, now we would go and have a look up here and see if we can find any. So off you go there just for 2 minutes. See if you can underline any to link to that, or find any in it, and then I'll go through it there in 2 minutes. We'll write one answer and then we'll do it again, and I'll have a look at some questions then. Okay, 10 seconds here. Okay. James saw the potential to move to the Asian market and research opportunities to open a new manufacturing plant. Okay, nothing there so far. Human resource department. Okay, so they're being good to you there. What they are doing there is like that signpost type thing. They're trying to say to you, here, look, we're asking a question on HRM. This is where the links are going to be, basically. Okay, so in an ABQ, often there's 3 paragraphs, and it's usually that the A and B and a C would come all from one of the paragraphs. Now, if you were to find a link, so just say this is the paragraph on HR. If you were to find a link that you felt was relevant in a different paragraph, you're allowed to use it. No problem at all, okay? And one thing because we're kind of under time pressure and probably trying to get a lot in, was, can you reuse a link, okay? So just say for enterprise skills and characteristics, you read a sentence and you think, geez, that could be risk-taking and it could be proactive. You can't reuse that same link for 2 different enterprise skills and characteristics because it's within the same question. But just say a link was relevant to an enterprise skill and characteristic, and it also happened that link might be relevant to a human resource function. You are allowed to put a link in A and reuse the link in B. So that's fine, but using the same link twice in A, not fine. Okay, so don't reuse the same link. So that's why I would try and get you to plan the answer first nearly and mark it, and I'll show you how I'm going to mark it now, rather than starting to write and searching as you go, because you might actually want to go, well, that quote, because a quote could be fine for 2 or 3 different points, and you want to just probably wait before you start answering to make sure that you have a quote lined up for each of the parts of the answer that you kind of want to give. Okay. The Human Resource Department of Medway looked at the need for staff for the new plant. Okay. So just that there by itself, looked at the need for staff for new plant, that there would be fine as 1 for manpower planning. If that was the quote that you put in there, you're going to get the marks for it. So you can say manpower planning, doing a staff audit, forecasting future needs, and looking at whether they need to recruit or make people redundant. Quote, looked at the Medway's devices, looked at the need for the new for staff for the new plant. Full marks. You're getting full marks there, no problem at all. You can move on. Okay. While many of the staff from the Irish plant will be relocated, the HR department predicts they will need to recruit 120 staff within the next 6 months. Okay. This is a good example of, do I need to give a full sentence? Okay. So if you just wrote, the HR department predicts they will need to recruit 120 staff within the next 6 months, that would also be fine. If you wrote from the start of that sentence, while many of the staff, and you went to the full stop, both would get full marks because it's not a contradiction. There's not more than one link there. So you're fine either or there. You don't need to go from the very start to the very end of the sentence. Now, the only thing is that quote there is the same. That's manpower planning as well. So either of those would be good. Do you need to give 2 because there's 2 there? No. 1 quote per point. Perfect. Move on. There might be more than one, and that's grand. Pick whichever one you want and move on. Okay, let's us move on then. The department advertised on recruitment websites in a wide range of countries to attract the best candidates. So again, if all you did was write the highlight a bit there, you'd be fine. So I'm going to call that number 2, and I'm going to call that recruitment and selection. So that quote there is about recruiting and selecting. Again, if you wrote for every position or you didn't write it, it's no biggie, whatever. Okay, the job advertisements highlighted the excellent salaries offered by the business. So here, that's a case where this quote could actually be used in 2 places. You could use that for your recruitment and selection because it's about a job advertisement, which is part of recruitment and selection, relevant. So totally fine. But you wouldn't want it because it also mentions excellent salaries, which is your pay and rewards. So that's like your financial, non-financial type stuff. So I would use that quote there around the salaries for the pay and rewards. Interviews were conducted via Skype to facilitate international applicants. Again, that's kind of recruitment and selection. So you could use that sentence if you wanted to. So you've got loads of links for that. The HR team ensured all selection panels had a gender balance. Again, recruitment and selection. So a panel interview is when there's a group of interviewers to try and reduce any biases such as a gender balance, so that it's not So they're saying here, yeah, there was a gender balance. So it's not all just one gender on an interview panel, which an interviewee or candidate may feel that then there's a bias in favor of a different person or whatever. So they all fall under recruitment selection. So you can just pick just one. The quarterly staff appraisals at the Irish plant have been postponed. So it doesn't matter whether they've been postponed, whether they're having 5 of them. That is just a relevant quote to do with performance appraisals. So it kind of just unlocks you being allowed to say performance appraisal. And then this is largely due to the HR department planning and induction program for new staff. So that quote there is around training and development. So now we have our training and development one. And then the HR team have also asked by Marie for suggestions on how to retain their top employees. So I suppose what we're saying there is that's managing employee-employer relations there as well, the last one. So there's actually a link for all of them. So you could give all. Now this is like that, how many do you give for 30 marks? Like for 30 marks and with so many links there, I would say like I'd be pushing the top person to give 4 to 5 just because of the 30 marker. Like, you know, I could see them looking for 5 there if it was excellently answered by loads of people. I think in 2020 it worked out that it was 3 at 10 marks, so you'd be wasting time, but you don't know, and that's the harsh thing for that. You just don't know. For the sources of finance one, you do know it's a short, a medium, and a long. For managed activities, you do know it's planning, organizing, controlling. So it's just those are the breaks with HR. Like there's loads of them, so it could be more. I would be uncomfortable myself to only give 3, because if it was marked 4, you're going to lose like seven marks, nearly 2%. If it was marked out of 5, you're going to lose 12 marks, which is 3%. So for me, it's not worth the risk, especially when you don't need to write too much. Like if we look at what I've actually written there, a performance appraisal, like, you know, we have our state bit in. So I'm going to get marks for that. So just say it was 2 marks. A meeting to evaluate an employee's contribution to business would be worth 2 marks. It opens feedback or can set targets to motivate staff. What I'm saying for the ABQ is I would give like an extra expansion bit. So I kind of had my state and explain bit there, but in this instance, if it's a 3 by 10 marks, they would break down the explain bit to be 2 bits of information. So I would just look to try and give at least 2 points of development for it. And if where possible, potentially link it to the actual text. And they were talking there about that they had postponed it or whatever, you know. But there's probably not too much to link. Like I'd be totally happy there that you'd be getting the extra marks. And then we just bring this quote in for the quarterly staff appraisals, whatever. We just rewrite that under that, and then we move on to the next one, and we go again. Okay, 8:57. I think I have probably pushed you to the brink tonight. So for anyone still on at nearly 9 o'clock on Tuesday after bank holiday, I appreciate it, and I hope it's been kind of useful for you. I'll leave the rest, I think, and maybe if there's any last question or two, it might be the easiest way to do it. I don't know, Chloe, what do you think?
Yeah, the only questions that I got that were kind of outside what you covered was, what would you recommend doing, reading the ABQ first or the questions first?
Yeah, I suppose like, yeah, I'd practice it and just like try both ways. Yeah, definitely. I think I was kind of saying there, I personally just go keywords first, rough worksheet, or even on your answer sheet. Like there's no point hiding any rough work. You can get marks for it. So even before you answer at the top of your page, I'd nearly just write down the kind of keywords, get my brain set on what I'm expecting to read, so that when I go and read it, stuff pops out a little more. So if it was enterprise skills characteristics, I'd just be like, right, confident, displaying self-belief, proactive, using initiative, resilient, being determined, you know, try and get those down, and then go and read it, and then go, oh, that matches, and kind of get that list, like the list I kind of have on the side there, where those are the functions, and then I'm listing the quotes 1 to 6 in it. And I think it could be good practice, like just say, you know, to do an ABQ might take an hour, but like a 10-minute thing could be to, you know, if you're a teacher, give the class the text and the keywords and just get them to highlight the links like that. Or if you're a student, you know, go through 3 or 4 ABQs, checking what the keywords are, and then trying to identify the links and check the market scheme that you're right, and just go through that process of actually like connecting links to keywords, rather than having to feel like you do the whole thing every time you go and do it. Okay, and anything else?
The only other thing was somebody asked earlier on, they just asked it again. For chapter 2, what would you say the types of bargaining?
As in keywords for bargaining? I don't know, is it
Yeah, I would say with keywords, they asked the type, so I suppose keywords would kind of cover that there for them.
yeah, like bargaining, yeah, I suppose like both parties giving up something to reach a compromise would be what I'd look for there. The other thing, actually, just if people are logging off, is do email and reach out and get on with any questions. Like I do really like helping out. So tbggavin@gmail.com. If you're logging off, just get on and ask something even to clarify it after this, and I'll try and get back to you. No problem at all. But yeah, if anything else there, yeah, let us know. And then I'll try open the chat here.
Yeah, I think it's all just kind of thanking thank you now. Oh, someone just said there, I think they're looking for individual, collective, and national bargaining.
Oh yeah, sorry. The collective bargaining. Yeah, of course. Sorry. So that came up there. I think it was the same year. It was 2 years ago with the right to cancel thing as well. Yeah. So I think just what was in the scheme there, basically that it was the parties with the government setting wages for everyone. I actually don't have it on the top of my head. I can go and have a dig and see who it is and get in touch. But I don't think I had changed much in my notes based around that anyway, since that for myself anyway.
That's perfect. That's kind of it. Everyone else is just kind of saying thanks very much. If there's any teachers here and they're looking for an attendance cert, you can just email limerick@bstai, and I can send it on to you then. But other than that, I think I'll just stop the recording there, Gavin, because there's no other questions. Just all thanks very much. Very
Amazing. Yeah,
valuable.
well, yeah, thanks so much for organising, and thanks to everyone who stuck with it the whole time. Yeah. Anyway, fair play to you. Hope you were getting a cup of tea in the middle of it and stuff. But yeah, no, it was really nice to do. And like that, do reach out, and I'll try and help you if I can, if I'm able to, if I know what I'm talking about. And I suppose just to reinforce that I was just trying to get across what I do and what I've come to doing. And there's probably lots of different ways to skin it, but hopefully there's some take home points from it. I think Kelvin online tonight would always say something like this: if you can get 2 good things from it, then you've probably done well. So hopefully I've given you at least 2 anyway. Yeah, but thanks a lot then. Otherwise, then thanks, Chloe.
One last thing was, can you just say the email again that you'll just for
yeah,
people
sorry,
that queries
yeah, you can contact through GavinDuffyBusiness.com, or it's tbggavin@gmail.com. Like, so I think I'd set it up from the business guys, like TBG and then Gavin. So tbggavin@gmail.com. And I have a newsletter and stuff on the site. If you sign up to that, it'll come from that address, and you could just reply either. So if any teachers haven't had any of those packs, I'm sending them out just through the newsletter every week, and I have a separate page for teachers on the site. So I get in touch if you haven't seen them or you don't have access to them, and I'll share them on with you as well.